Because Ben, like one thing that I've learned from you is that you have an ability to move into these new spaces, you know, discussion group, a Slack channel, a community with Jack Butcher, and you seem to do very well there. What is the way that you interact with the digital community that you found like really helps progress you along, meet new people, get engaged?
Participate and share my stuff. I don't just loiter and like read stuff and visualize value. I'm like, here's my landing page. Like, tell me what's wrong with it. I'd love to hear it. I go to Jack's office hours and I enjoy it. He talks for 20 minutes and you get to ask him questions afterwards. Like the portal, there's, you know, hundreds of people in there who are doing nothing. And there's probably like 10 to 15 projects. I'm like, okay, I know how to build apps. I'll build you guys' app. I mean, that's like a quantifiable like value. You know, so it's like, I guess, getting in those networks and not just leeching them for what they can add to you. But that's the whole purpose of these networks, is like having the proper culture in place that you get inside and you're encouraged to contribute as an individual member as well. So that's like, I think the biggest key is I get in and I'm like, how can I contribute to the growth of this community? And if I can do that effectively, then I will make myself a standout member of that community. And
you think like, we've kind of learned in regular society or in real life that the person that is the nicest, that is like, oh, you did a really good job, is the most valuable. And what I've found in the network and from participators like you, or like, there's a couple people that they've given me feedback on the classes or how the things are structured, where you open up that thing and you're like, oh man, that hurts. Yeah, you're right. Oh, I got to fix that. And what you start doing is it would be easy to be like, I don't want to read the text messages or the messages from the person that gave me that negative feedback. But then you start looking around at what helped me get the best, the fastest. It was that person that wrote me that stuff that was like, oh. And so you start seeing in the right environments, the person that has the guts to say what they really think moves up. Whereas the people that are trying to be cool or quiet or don't know what, or they're too hesitating to say what they really think, they stay at the base layer because they're not offering things that help other people get better. So I think one of the things that you do really well is provide feedback and you contribute, and other people, they're like, hey, I want to fix this, and this is what I think you should do, and this is what I'm willing to do to help you fix that, and this is where I think you could go. You can see that happening in the safe space of a network that you don't have in the town hall that is Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah. No, because that's the layer up, and like I'm not the main contributor in either or any that I join by any means. I contribute enough that I can, like, because it's a give and take game. Like it's a closed system. Like what you get it or what you put in, you get out. Like there's people that are putting in way more than I've ever put into any network I've joined, and they're getting exponentially more. And it's incredible to like see. Yeah, it's just incredible to see like what people can put into a community and get back from a community. And yeah, that's the biggest value in the whole thing.
So you mentioned the Eric Weinstein group here. Did you say Steen or Stein? Weinstein?
I said Stein because, Rob said Stein. I usually say Steen. I don't know, honestly. I hate to say that like on the air because I listen to his podcast, but I listened to his one with Stephen. God, is it Stephen Anthony? He's the jazz physicist. And he called him Weinstein. He referred to him as Weinstein. I guess that was like where I was like, okay, if they've been friends for a long time and he says Weinstein, it's got to be a Weinstein. But then
okay, so you
not to go on.
Okay, so you have been in the Eric Weinstein network for a while. You followed his podcast. You've even gone so far as to help them build their app. Mm-hmm. I think he is doing something really different over there at the portal, and I catch about half of what he puts out because he's prolifically putting out content, and you can't just like flip it on and race through it. Like it's deep stuff. What do you think he's doing that's so different? Why is this feel to everyone that touches it like Eric's podcasts are different?
He's communicating bluntly. Like if you listen, my gosh, listen to the first 30 minutes of his last podcast with I hope I'm saying Stephen. I hope his name is Stephen. Like he wrote a book called The Jazz of Physics that I intend to read soon. But the first 30 minutes of there, like he breaks down his perspective of like kind of the current chaos that's going on in the world and I mean, this is a guy who just with his background and his positioning in such a broad variety of fields. I mean, such a broad like knowledge base in general. To hear how he breaks down concepts, not concerned for how they will be filtered, but for the way that he thinks And he will argue with people on the podcast who will say like, no, this is the way that I think about this. But it's like, you want to hear, like, it's addictive because it's like it's a dialogue that people aren't allowing themselves to have in other
definitely
mediums.
not
Like,
in public. Yeah, they talk about things where you're like, I would talk about that if there were no cameras on and maybe people put their phones underneath their leg or something, you know, like these are conversations that you're like, I don't think you're supposed to do this.
Yeah. The ideas that I hear, I guess that's what I like about it a lot. And what made me like literally feel a responsibility to contribute in any way I could is like the ideas that they're putting out are like pushing me further to the edge of like what I'm. And I think we even touched about that, like maybe the last time we spoke in the other podcast, but like, I think like one of the biggest responsibilities of individuals, like what we can do for ourselves and what we can do for the world is push up against like what we think is possible, for lack of a better term, or what we think we're willing to do as individuals, or what we're able to do. And he's pushing, from an idea perspective, at least, he's pushing me up against my wall of like, wow, I did not think about that way, or I would not think about this. This is a great perspective for me to hear from this individual he's had on. He brings people in from different walks of the same way you do. Like I watched your podcast vehemently, like before, like we even started kind of like doing what we do, but like you're willing to interview people with different perspectives, like people who are, you know, completely anti-mask, completely for mask, completely anti-X, completely for X. Like you draw this circle around like what the whole picture looks like by talking to people with different perspectives on like everything that's happening in between. And yeah, you cultivate different perspectives.
I mean, isn't it amazing? The thing that is the most surprising is you can go your whole life and people be like, hey, you know, don't believe what you see in the news. Hey, don't, you know, you got to. When I really started doing this project where I was like, hey, I'll talk to anybody that I think has a novel, interesting way of looking at the world. That's what's in. And I'm not going to interview people because somebody else demands that I do. I'm going to just, if I'm around in the world and I see you and you look interesting, I'm going to invite you on the podcast. But what has been such a jarring lesson for me has been that these people, every single one of them views the world completely differently. And we right now have this like sense-making apparatus, to quote Eric Weinstein, is that they want us all to think the same thing. They demand that the words that come out of my mouth replicate the opinions that they have in their head. And this is like a very unusual thing when you think about how many different perspectives there are in the world. Every single person I talked to, I would have found things I agreed with and things I definitely did not agree with.
Well, and that's what's missing from, like, I keep using his terminology, I guess, like, and that's what's missing from like the institutional layer. And they were talking about that. I mean, it's been a common theme like across all of his content is like we're not leaving room for these different perspectives in like a constructive way. We're creating artificial ways to perceive diversity in a way that doesn't truly acknowledge the the intimate authenticity of like what's diverse about that individual. Like here we're saying like, you know, here you are and you're awesome because you are X trait or X color or X whatever it might be. But that doesn't help actually hone in on like what the intimate value. And that's why I love the beginning, because he really says like one of the coolest creative, I don't want to say values, but like one of the most unique traits about, he says the African-American like community, not even at the intellectual level, but at the base level, is that they absolutely thrive with like creative,
competition.
Yeah.
These games where they're like always trying to one up and play this thing. And from that means that you have to be innovative enough to be able to improvise.
Yes.
And improvisation shows that you truly deeply know something, because you can use it in the real world. It's like reading a book on fighting versus actually knowing how to fight.
Right. And whether it's taboo to say that somebody is good at traits like that because of an ethnicity or a color or a cultural background or a gender is becoming like we're giving people status because of these traits, but we're not allowing ourselves to have conversations about what's, you know, good about like not even good, but like what's different between like these different walks of life that allows people to stand out and kind of individualize in society in a way that's productive for the whole. Like we're not leaving room for that. We're like trying to water down.
I think a good example of this is the other day I was talking with a female friend of mine, And I made the point that I had only just recently realized, but because of the mask conversation, that as a woman, you have to be much more skeptical of things. Like your risk tolerance has to be much lower than it does for a 6'4", 220-pound man. Now the man should be careful and should be thinking, do I want to get into this situation? But a woman doesn't have the ability to just force her way through a crowd of people in the same way that a man does. When we first started having this discussion, where I was making a differentiation on what is the calculation of risk between a man and a woman, she was really upset with me. And it took like 30 minutes for me to be like, I'm saying something that to me seems so obvious as to be 1 + 1 = 2. And for some reason you are thinking that I am assaulting you with the idea that you're not strong or you're not capable. And that's the only thing I am saying is you have to think further ahead than I have ever had to. Maybe I should, but you definitely have been thinking further ahead than me. And I don't know why we can't have these discussions.
Yeah, we can't discuss things like this. We would rather pretend that everybody is the same based off of all of these, like we'd rather like acknowledge the differences and say, okay, but like let's acknowledge them, but ignore them for, I guess, not whatever reason. But yeah, it's like acknowledging, but genericizing, like not pointing out the individual values of each like sub.
Yeah, maybe the idea that people should be finding common ground and where do we relate, maybe we've taken that too far.
Yeah.
Maybe the problem is that what we should be doing is valuing people for the fact that they are all deeply, deeply different, and that every single person you look at has a multitude of personalities within them and a multitude of opportunities for greatness and pitfalls for terrible, terrible tragedy. And every single human being a miracle. And that when you strip away the diversity of them, the individuality, then they aren't a miracle anymore.
Yeah, it's the idea of like individualization and like self-actualization, all of that fun. Like have you heard of like the great, I hate to say like, well, yeah, the great human theory or the great man or the great woman theory of like history? These individuals pop up and they dramatically change the trajectory of like history because of like some individual actions. Like you can, like, sure, we can highlight because Elon Musk, you can point at Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a great man who has changed the trajectory of history as it will proceed after his actions. But it's like the Blanche of Castile to a Louis V thing. Like you can look at Louis V. Louis V is a great man.
He's saying Blanche of Castile is St. Louis the Ninth's mother.
We can look at King Louis. And then we can look at his mom, and she is a great woman of history because she pushed, that's her history.
Yeah, without her, without him. Yep.
Yeah, and we can look at whoever was, it's like, this is like where we wrapped up last time. It's like that goes on forever. Somebody who wrote a book or somebody who you bumped into who like smiled or had a perspective that like made you think about something in a different way. And it's like the spontaneous collisions that kept going like after that caused any remote change in like your action thereafter. It's like the butterfly effect. It goes on forever. And everybody who takes action is a great person in history. It's like, yeah, like you said, the miracle of life. Everybody is. There's no great man or woman that stand out among the rest. Everybody is. It's just like to what degree or where you're expressing that greatness.